hard to answer that question because we, in this country, have never had that experience before. This is something brand new. I know of no example where a privately managed school has been co-located with public school up until the last few years. And there are very few places in the United States where this is happening today. In most places where there are charter schools, the charter schools find their own facilities and make their own arrangements, and it's a burden on them, but it's also a burden on public schools when the charter schools are placed inside a public school building, taking space away from the public school. So I think that this is a very unusual arrangement. I think, so far as I know, and there may be other cities that do this, but the only one that I'm aware of where this happens is Los Angeles. And it leads to rivalry between the schools. When one school is better funded than the other, when one school has laptops and better facilities, it creates rivalry and hostility between the children. I think actually where there have been experiences in the last few years when the fad became to break up large schools and to create multiple schools in a single building. And I write about this in my book, where there's tremendous rivalries even between 5 public schools under one roof, or 3 public schools under one roof.
Block that door.
That's going to be here, though.
Okay.
That's something holding us back for radio.
Okay, let me just connect it up. Many problems having multiple schools under the same roof. I think when you have different management organizations, one a regular public school and one a charter school in the same building, there are going to be natural rivalries, and it does not lead to collaboration. The larger problems of the school system have to do with class size, with overcrowding, with buildings not being adequately maintained, with not having a real curriculum. I've been a strong proponent of the importance of the arts in schools, and science and history and literature and geography and civics and these things. This is one of the reasons why I've become so critical of the high-stakes testing, is because we incentivize teaching reading and math, and at the same time we're removing an incentive to teach the arts. I mean, the arts, and this is true not just in this city, where many schools don't even have an art teacher. Many schools don't have adequate space for physical education. Many schools, the kids are not getting daily physical education. The facilities are not available, and their time is spent preparing for state tests. So that the problems of the schools go beyond the issue of co-location, but it certainly doesn't make it any easier to run a good school.
Okay, and just finally, there's a magazine, City Limits, which talks about the Harlem Children's Zone. And in support of what you said about the emphasis on testing, it was indicated that they had to stop. They decided that they would stop and reassess where they were going, because they had a broader type of program such as you talked about, but their test scores weren't performing, and they were in a limbo state and were about to have another kind of assessment imposed on them. So they decided that they were going to focus on test results, and that is what they have been doing according to this article in City Limits. But as someone who was an initial advocate for charter schools, could you just sum up in one sentence why you are now opposed to charter schools?
Well, let me just address the first part of your question. I greatly admire what the Harlem Children's Zone is doing in toto, which is to recognize that children have large needs beyond the academic sphere, that school systems and educators and the whole society has to be concerned about children's health and well-being, and that people who say that poverty is just an excuse are really not talking either from experience or from empathy for the burdens that poverty imposes on children and families. And I admire the fact that they're concerned about the whole child and the neighborhood and the community. I think that's the right approach. There was a book written about the Harlem Children's Zone by an editor at the New York Times Magazine, Paul Tough. The book is called Whatever It Takes. And it's clear as you read the book that this is a very important and valuable organization that became unduly focused on test scores. So much so that at a certain point when the first class entered the Harlem Children's Zone charter school didn't get high enough scores, and the board of trustees, dominated by wealthy lawyers and hedge fund managers and so forth, said, we want those scores. And Jeffrey Canada called in the entire grade and said, you're dismissed. Threw out the whole first grade because he couldn't get their scores up. If we took away the high stakes and said, your job is educating children and do whatever it takes to educate them, and we're not going to just do scores as the only metric, I think those kids would not have been thrown out, and many of them could have been helped and would be in a better place today. Now, the second part of your question, ask me again, because I've gotten
In one
lost.
sentence, why has your position?
Why has my position changed? You know, I supported charter schools from the outset. I was working in Washington. I was Assistant Secretary for Research in 1991-92, and I met with a senator from Minnesota who was one of the early advocates of charters. And it sounded like a very exciting concept. And I saw this concept in this kind of pristine view of this will help solve some of the problems of public education. And I had a kind of view of, you know, the more good schools you can create, the better it will be. What I didn't take into consideration was what I learned over time, which is charter schools actually not taking a fair share of kids with disabilities, not taking a fair share of limited English proficient kids, and in fact cherry picking in very poor neighborhoods. And as I saw more and more evidence of this happening, and I think that it happens for a couple of different reasons. One is because of the emphasis on high stakes testing, where reading and math are the only thing that count. And the other is that with many of the for-profit entrepreneurs want to say our school is better than the public school, therefore, you know, favor us over them, give us their space. And so we've in a sense incentivized people to make the charter schools focus only on the kids that will succeed and to ignore the kids who need help the most, thus disabling the public education system. I guess that my change of view and heart came about because having been associated with various conservative think tanks over the years, I began to hear a thread of hostility towards public education. And I'm a product of public education. I don't want to see public education dismantled. I don't want to see public education destroyed. I don't want to see it replaced by the private sector. I respect the private sector in terms of what it does well. I don't want it to take over our public education system. So that's the bottom line for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Babich. I have two quick questions that you don't have to be, you know, long-winded with if you don't want to be.
That was a run-on sentence, by the way. One sentence run-on.
Thank you so much, yeah. First, I want to get a sense from you, if you can, in the next 10 years, so to speak, or shorter if appropriate, what should the next generation of charter schools look like? What should their role in the public education be?
Well, I would like to see charter schools that address the original vision, that take on the kids who have the toughest problems, who are the least motivated, the least engaged, and figure out ways that can help public education do a better job.
And this, last but not least, what is the message you are trying to communicate through your recently published book, The Death and Life of the Great American School System, How Testing and Choice Are Undermining Education?
Two messages. One is that public education is the backbone of our democratic society, and we must strengthen it and not abandon it. And, well, three. The second is that high-stakes testing encourages cheating, gaming the system, and undermines education. And number three is that what our children need is not a focus on basic skills alone, but a broad and rich curriculum that includes the arts, science, history, literature, civics, foreign languages, the whole, what we would expect if we lived in a district like Nassau County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.